These are the contents from the chapter number 5. First one is creating web server. Then second, handling HTTP request. Third one is sending request. Fourth one is HTTP streaming. So first we will start with creating web server. In this, first we will see what is web server. Here, a web server is a software application which handles HTTP request sent by the HTTP client, like web browsers, and returns web pages in the response to clients. Here, a web server is a software application which handles HTTP request. This request sent by HTTP clients. Okay. Then there are several web browsers. These are the clients. Okay, web browsers are the clients, and after sending the HTTP request, it will send the response in the form of web pages to clients, HTTP clients. Then web servers usually deliver HTML documents along with images, style sheets, and scripts. That response may include a response in the sense that HTML documents includes several images, style sheets, scripts. Then most of the web servers support server-side scripts using scripting languages or redirecting the task to an application server. Sorry, most of the web servers support server-side scripts using scripting languages or redirecting the task to an application server which retrieves data from a database and perform complex logic and then sends the results to the HTTP client through the web server. Through web server, it will support server-side script. There are multiple scripting languages. Through that scripting languages, it will support that uh, server-side script, or it will redirect the task on that application server. From that, it will retrieve the data from the database and performs some complex logical task, and then it will send the results to that HTTP client through that web server. Okay, then here you can see the example Apache web server. It is one of the most commonly used web servers. It is an open source. Okay, Apache web server. Then here you can see the web application architecture. It This architecture includes, or it is divided into four layers: client, server, business layer, and data layer. Your client may be mobile browser, web browser, or any other application. Client will send the request to that server through that web browser, that is HTTP request, or any application or using mobile browser. It will send that HTTP request. Request comes to that server, that is web server, and that request will be processed in that server. Then here you can see the business layer. Business layer includes that application server which is connected to that web server, and file system. There is a file system for that layer. Okay, here you can see the file system for that layer. It is connected to that web server. Then last one is data layer. Data layer includes database and external system for that application server. Whenever user or that HTTP client send the HTTP request to that web server, that request will be processed in that server and fetch the data from the database in that data layer. These are the four layers of web application: client, server, then business layer, and data layer. Here, client. This layer consists of web browsers, mobile browsers, or applications which can make HTTP requests to the web server. HTTP means Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It will client HTTP client sends the request through that web browser, mobile browser, or applications to that web server. As I already told you that client will send the request from these sources to the web server. Then what is server here? Second layer, this layer has the web server which can intercept the request made by the clients and pass them the response. Here, this the web server will process the request from the HTTP client and send response back to that HTTP client. Then third one is business layer. This layer contains the application server. This layer contains the application server which utilized by the web server to do the required processing for that HTTP request. This layer interacts with the data layer via the database or some external programs. Here you can see this application server or this business layer contain application server. This application server interacts with the data layer for database or interacts with some external systems. Then last one is data layer. This layer contains the databases or any other source of data. Here you can see this layer contains the databases and any other sources of data from that external system. These are the four layers of web application. Then next point is creating Node.js web server. How we can create the Node.js web server? Here you can see Node.js makes it easy. Node.js makes it easy to create a simple web server that processes incoming requests asynchronously. That request will be processed asynchronously. Here you can see the example for a simple Node.js web server contain that in server.js file. Here you can see one variable is there, variable where HTTP is equals to require in brackets in single quote HTTP. As I told you in last sessions that require method is used for importing Node.js core module. Okay, here you can see the core module is HTTP. Here import Node.js core module. Then where server, another variable server. Now we are going to use the inbuilt methods from that code module, core module HTTP. HTTP dot method. This is the method of HTTP module. HTTP dot create server. Now we are going to use that method creating server. Create server in bracket. We are going to write one function request comma response. Okay, here this method is used for creating server, and you can write some code here for handling that request. Okay, after closing that function server dot listen, this is the method from that HTTP module. Server dot listen, this is the 5000 is the, you can see at port 5000, this is the port. We are going to listen here, listen for any incoming request. Listen for any incoming request. Now we are going to print console.log node.js web server at port 5000 is running. This is the port number. Now we are running on port number 5000. Okay, and we are going to print the message that that server is running on this port. Okay, so what we are, how we are going to create a node here, create a web server here. We are going to import that HTTP module. Then we are going to access that create server using create server method. We are going to create the server and write the function for handling that request, and we are going to listen that server, that is using listen method. Okay, here you can, in this example you can see we import the HTTP module using require function. Using require function we have imported this HTTP module. Then this HTTP module is the core module of Node.js, so no need to install it using npm. It is a core module of npm, so there is no need to install that npm. Then the next step is to call create server method of HTTP and specify callback function with request and response. Here response parameter. Finally we have to call that listen method with the port number to start listening to incoming request on that mentioned port number 5000. Okay, here we can specify any unused port here. This is the way we can create a Node.js web server. Then how to run this? Run this code by writing that node server.js, that is the file name. Okay, by writing this command in the terminal prompt or window, terminal window or that command prompt like node, and the file name is server.js. It will give us message that we have written in console.log node.js web server is running on, web server at port 5000 is running. Okay, so this is how we can create a Node.js web server using simple steps. Okay, now we can see how to handle the HTTP request and send a response to that Node.js web server. That is, next point is handling HTTP request. How to handle that HTTP request? We have created that server using create server method of the HTTP core module here. The HTTP dot create server method includes request and response parameters. Here you can see request and response parameters, which is supplied by Node.js. The request object can be used to get information about the current HTTP request. That request object is for, it can be used for to get information about current HTTP request. For example, URL, request header, and the data. And the response parameter here. Next one is the response. This object can be used to send a response for a current HTTP request. That request will be fetched that HTTP current request and it will send the response to that current request. Okay. Then in next session, we will see the example programming example of how to handle that HTTP request and how to send the response to that request, how request is handled in Node.js. Okay. So that's it for today's session. We will stop here. Thank you.